on, everybody? Welcome back to another one of our convos. This is Dario Hunt from the Life Fish. With me is my co-host, as always, Mr. Darius Walker. Say what's up to everybody.
What's up, everybody? Artist D. Walker, welcoming you back to Living Life Fearless in another podcast episode with two very excellent guests, Nicholas Brewer and Faye. Please introduce yourselves, Nick.
Yeah, my name is Nicholas Manting-Brewer. I'm a filmmaker based out of Los Angeles, California. I've kind of been all over the place in my life, but I spent a lot of my childhood in beautiful Georgia, specifically Augusta, Georgia. And so I'm here today to talk to you about our new film, Lumpkin GA, which is just now available on Canopy. And it's kind of a story about what home means to the various stakeholders around the immigration issue, specifically in the small town of Lumpkin.
Cool. And Faye, if you want to give a little background.
Yeah. My name is Feixue Tang. I go by Faye, and I'm from China, Beijing. And I went to US for my grad school and continued to work there afterwards. And I was the director of photography for the film Lumpkin GA. And I'm very happy to be here to be talking with you guys about things related to the films and the other stuff.
Awesome. So the whole point of this conversation and why we kind of, met each other and kind of matched up is we want to talk about your short film that, like you just said, has just released called Lumpkin GA, and kind of just the process and everything behind it, and a lot of the issues that it's dealing with. In particular, it's dealing with the immigration issue, which has been a very hot topic for the past, 4, probably even longer years than that, at least for sure in the front of American politics, and especially now. And first thing, I've seen it, Darius has seen it, and first thing that jumped out of my mind is just kind of how timely it was. And I guess my first question is, why this issue for you, and how did you come to decide to create a film about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, thank you so much for having us. I think that I think when 2016 happened and Donald Trump was elected president, even before that, when he first announced his campaign, immediately he kind of made immigration a central topic in a very divisive way. And so it immediately became this hyper polarized conversation. And there was a lot of what he injected into it was a lot of vitriol. There's plenty of other words we could use, but I think vitriol is the one I'll go with for right now. But it kind of had awoken in me this interest to kind of look back at my home. For years beforehand, I had been reading about how Georgia had these partnerships with the federal government where local police officers would be kind of deputized for the federal government to go in and round up undocumented immigrants that they may run into on routine traffic stops or in the regular course of their events. So I think that I always kind of been interested in exploring that issue, and I think the 2016 election and even before that, Donald Trump's kind of rise to get the Republican nomination kind of triggered my kind of realization that there's a massive story here. And then I was late one night when I was in grad school, I stumbled across a few articles that touched on this really small rural town in Georgia called Lumpkin, and the county itself, which is called Stewart County, and their relationship to this for-profit immigrant detention center. And there had also been a lot of news at the time because at the beginning of his administration, Trump had kind of encouraged business with for-profit detention facilities and prisons. He kind of had a lot of policies early on geared at kind of revamping those programs, which, to the previous administration, to the Obama administration's credit, to the Obama administration's credit, they had kind of tried to back away from the private prison industry. And so it was kind of a fresh in my mind for all of those reasons. And so I when we went in to think about the next project that Faye and I were going to do, we had just come off of doing essentially my USC thesis. This just seemed like really fertile ground. It also seemed like a story that not many people outside of kind of the activist community were paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And so for all those reasons, it just felt fertile, right? So we kind of randomly one day I asked Faye, we were still in school at the time when this all kind of started. We finished it way after we were done with school, but in the initial beginning, it was just kind of like, hey, Faye, do you want to go to Georgia with me? And she was like, yeah, sure. And, I took her to Lumpkin, Georgia, kind of rural. It was her first time on the East Coast. And, fortunately, we're still friends. I mean, after that whole experience, but in all sincerity, I mean, I think that one of the things that I hope rings true in this film is that this is a story about people. This isn't a story necessarily about the political discourse we choose to tell. In fact, we focus very little on that directly in the film. We don't really address any of the talking points you typically hear. We mostly just try to tell you the stories of the people that are living through these things that you typically read about in the headlines. So yeah, that was kind of what was important to us. And I would say early out to start, we actually envisioned this being like a 10-minute experimental film. And it kind of, we went once and then we ended that trip and we were like, I think we have to come back. I mean, Faye can speak more to that, but I think we both just felt it in our hearts that we needed to go back. Faye, I don't know if you have anything you want to say on that topic or any of these topics.
Yes, please speak to just that what it was like the first time, just especially going to the South. Maybe was that like your first time in the South of America, and then just like Nicholas said about what made you want to go back? Like, what, I think we need more. We gotta finish. We gotta do more of the story.
Yeah, definitely. It was actually my first time on the East Coast and my first time in the South as well. And I have never been there before. So I've always been very curious about all different parts of the United States. And Nick took this project to me and saying, hey, we got this very interesting town in Georgia. And that is in the middle of kind of nowhere, and it's not really connected to any bigger city, and it has a really small population. But right beside it, like so suspiciously, there is this huge facility that has like almost 2,000 people there, like detainees. And he showed me the Google map overhead of that, and instantly it became very fascinating to me. And I've never been to Georgia before, so I'm like, yes, I'm gonna go there. I want to see what that's like, and what even just in general what the town is like. And we went there, and it was a really nice experience. And people were very, very kind and very outgoing. People are really nice there, and so that was a great experience. The reason that we constantly went back was because like we kind of went there without knowing anyone, and we went there and we started talking to people. And as we started talking to people, people were starting to connecting us to more of their connections. So the whole project just started to expand bigger and bigger. And so every single time at the end of our trip, we will be like, oh, but there was still so much more to discover here. And we learned so much that we didn't know before we went there. Of course, we did certain researches, especially Nick, he did tons of researches on the detention center and also a part of the history of the town. But every time when we were really there, when we really brought us into the people there and really talking to them, going to a bar, I think. We went to a bar there and talking to the lady at the gun shop, and all those experiences just added up and made us want to know more about them. So I think that's one of the major reasons that we kept going back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really interesting, especially that, the experience initially is pleasant, even though it's sort of like a work experience. You never know how you might be perceived trying to look into things per se,
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point about it. I won't say that we never ran into people that were not excited that we were there. We had actually one experience that was actually like one of our first experiences. That was it wasn't hostile per se, but it was very like, it was extremely curious. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, curious is the right word. And actually, funny enough, Marilyn Threets, who is one of the leads of the film and who owns the gun shop with her husband, was actually the person that kind of intercepted us and rescued us from that interaction, and like kind of stood up for us in that moment. And so I to Faye's point, people were incredibly kind, by and large. And are the incidences where there was like any kind of controversy were pretty minimal. In fact, I can only really think of one. Faye, I don't know if you can think of more, but I can only think of one offhand.
I couldn't think of more. I couldn't even remember the one that you are talking about.
Yeah, it was such a blip in our radar, honestly, because we spent so long. And, part of the approach that we kind of took with this film, and that I think we try to take in general, is I have a background in cultural anthropology. And so a lot of what I do is kind of on the ground, going around talking to people. And there is clearly kind of a thought about what this might be. But one of the things that constantly would happen with this film, and I think constantly happens with documentaries, is you go back and you learn more, and you kind of have to reframe how you're focusing things. And what you thought at the beginning, like I said, this was initially thought of as like a 10-minute experimental film. It quickly kind of evolved into something that I think is much more of like a portrait of the people in this town. Hopefully, yeah.
Well, definitely. It looked like you captured a lot of portraits. It was really interesting, especially, obviously, like you said, from the cinematography of Faye, like capturing these really interesting sort of like B film, like B shots for like moments where they're expressing, just part of their story, where like, these visuals tie in, and it's not just like the interviewee talking to the camera. I really like those like sort of moments, and like with the, like, I guess I don't know. There's so many characters, but I kind of want to talk about Jorge Gonzalez, because he seems like sort of a main sort of like crux, like a really pivotal figure in that. At what point did you actually meet him?
It was actually like that was a complete accident, and it was actually one of our last trips there is when we met him. We showed up kind of. We had dates that we would set up. Basically, we would shoot for like a week or 5 days, and then we'd come back home, and then I'd have to work for a few months to save up enough money to go back, because this was all kind of independently financed, and we were really kind of like scraping by to kind of make this film. So one of our last visits, we went and when we got there, we went to this ministry that is kind of a central location of the film called El Refugio, where the families of detainees stay. Right. And we had a really good connection with that particular group and the volunteers there. So we went and we happened to go one day, and then they said, there's a man who's just come out of the detention center. He's out on bond. So we kind of, would you be interested in speaking to him if he's interested in speaking to you? And fortunately, he was. And it really kind of, we spent a few days with him kind of just going through his story, following him around the town, because this was a very new experience for him. He had actually been in Arizona before that, where he lived with his family, right, and had been taken from Arizona all the way to Lumpkin, Georgia, which is actually a really common experience. A lot of people from all over the country end up in this very small rural town that they don't know outside of being in that detention center, right? And so what had happened was we met him. The first night we met him, we had dinner with him, and then we kind of had a conversation with him that we filmed, which makes up a lot of the interview that you see in the film. And then we kind of just spent a lot of time just hanging out with him that trip. That trip kind of became dedicated to focusing on Jorge at that point. And it was a complete accident. It was just happening to be there in the right day at the right time, that all kind of manifested.
mean, that's really interesting that you said that was like one of the last things and it was kind of an accident that happened because watching it, you would think that it was kind of planned out that way because he became such a central part of the story. Like, I don't know if I can really imagine the film without his parts in it, especially the ending, because when you, after everything you go through, you can come away feeling a little bit cynical about the whole process and about our country as a whole and how we deal with people. But then to still see him kind of talk about that like American dream and still believing in the process and believing in the system and everything, it gives you that kind of hopeful ending. And it's just amazing that you guys said that was kind of accidental because I think it just put such a nice touch to the film as a whole.
Yeah, and one of the things that we really tried to do in this film was we tried to preserve people's voices. I think a lot of time in films and in documentaries, there's this urge to kind of get people to say what you want them to say within an edit. And I think that that's like definitely appropriate, maybe like in certain contexts. But in this film, it was really important to us to preserve to preserve people's thoughts. And so very little of that ending speech from Jorge is actually edited. Like the dialogue that he says, those are organically his thoughts. It's not like we sat here and made him say these things. These were things that he actually said to us. So that conclusion where he's talking about the American dream, that's authentically who Jorge is. And in every conversation we had with him, that was a common sentiment he would go back to, which was kind of, I'm with you completely. I mean, you sit there and you listen to kind of the things that he experienced and the observations he made about the detention center and his time there. And even being through that process where he ends up halfway across the country, separated from his family without any form of identification so he can travel back, and he has to wait for somebody to come get him. It's miraculous to even have that optimism in any way. For me, it was extremely shocking.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that you did really well is that, as an American, as growing up, being born and raised here, like I guess you can take certain things for granted. And then once you kind of get to see that from another perspective and you see how other people have to go through the process of coming here and like being a part of this whole process and being part of this dream that we just consider like a basic right of ours, it was very eye-opening in that way, I think, particularly. And I think it's even more eye-opening when you specifically talk about like small town America, because most people don't have those experiences even in the States. So they don't really understand the issues and the problems that go on in like those different parts of the country. So I think in those two areas, this film did a really good job of like kind of portraying that without, like you said, without you having to like put it on a slide or like put it out yourself. They specifically tell you without, too much courage. Like they kind of just talk to you about it,
Yeah. And I think a lot of that really speaks to kind of the approach that Faye kind of encourages on set. I think that we set up shots with the idea that we're going to be patient and we're going to wait until we get to the point where someone is willing to open up. Because I think, and you guys know this because you interview people, but it usually takes people a while to get warmed up before they really start talking to you, right? Yeah. And I think so much of what we did was we did like 3-hour-long interviews. A lot of them were like very, very long interviews. And I just have to say, like there's a certain level of restraint that Faye has as a cinematographer and intuitiveness as well. There are moments in Jorge's when he's talking to us where we like punch in on him. He's playing with like a paperclip or something to kind of like, and you can tell it's kind of, or at least to me, it seemed like an anxiety tick or something, or just like helping him process what he was talking about. Those are moments that were actually picked up in the course of the interview. Those weren't like things that we made him do after the fact. We didn't make him like, these are things that Faye just like instinctually knew to pick up on as we were going. And I think that so much of the emotional impact of these interviews is really a testament to like how Faye chose to frame them and how she captured them. I mean, I really believe that. We have a relationship on set where I'm never kind of looking through the monitor at what she's doing. I actually just like fully trust her and I know her vision. We have enough conversations about it beforehand that when we get there, I know whatever she's going to come up with is the most impactful way to capture whatever we're currently looking at. You know what I mean? It's right. Just like,
well, yeah. I'm glad you kind of said that, because that kind of like really affirms things, too, because there's like a really like beautiful way that some of the scenes like transition, you know, and like even like Dario was mentioning at the end, just like the way he was touching the bricks on the building. That's a really beautiful moment that you captured. That you know, like one might wonder, was that natural? You know, but like it really did look natural, and you could see you did the next shot where he's actually looking and pondering and looking up. You know, it's like, you know, he's intrigued, he's interested, and so I really liked how you captured those moments in between. And I guess actually before we get too deep, because there's a lot of deep content we're probably about to talk about now. That's probably like the light part of the segment.
Yeah.
But I want to actually, you know, if we could jump back to maybe how you two met, you know, in grad school, just like because you both moved to California, right, for grad school, or you know, just, you know, let us know about just how that all derived.
Yeah. Faye, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So Nick and I admitted into USC, University of Southern California, and their film school there for the grad school. And we were in the same cohort, same year, same semester. And we were in a few classes together in the first year. And then we started to doing our own thing. And I started to shoot more. At that time, actually, I hadn't shot any documentaries yet. I was shooting more narrative shorts, like fictional films. And Nick has a passion for documentary, and he was about to do his grad thesis, and is this documentary about addiction in Southern California, especially for heroin and opioid epidemic there. And so one day Nick approached me and saying, hey, I have this project in mind that I'm interested in doing from a very humanistic approach. I'm really interested in people who are actually like suffering from those addictions, and there are actually tons of families lost their children to that addiction. And I'm very interested in doing a documentary about that. And that sounds very interesting to me. And at the same time, like his approach to that, he's focusing on location as well. Similar to Lumpkin, Georgia, he was focusing on the around like Simi Valley and Agora Hills in the Southern California area, which is actually like a really middle class neighborhood. Like I have been there, and it's like kind of like very nice suburban, and you wouldn't imagine like such problems are happening there in those like nice houses, and people are suffering there. And so instantly I became very interested, and he pitched this whole idea in a very humanistic way to really learn about things, just like how we did Lumpkin GA. We really went there and really like talked to people, sat down and just listened to them. And that's one of the major things that I love doing documentaries and films with Nick is of course, we would have our ideas about what this may be like, what this documentary may be like, and how we think about those issues. But at the moment that we set our foot in the location, we would just give up all those prejudgments or preconceptions, and we just went there and listened to what people has to say. And I think that also is why that, like we were talking about Jorge, and which is really, to me, it was also magical because he adds so much complexity to the film, like his love for the United States, and the way you mentioned, like the moment when he was touching the brick, that just happened spontaneously. And I love that moment so much as well. And I just felt his love and for life and for this country and his faith and hope. So you just felt that energy there. So that's one thing I love about doing documentaries with Nick, is because like, I think both him and I are usually very open to perceive what people are really going through and what people really have to say. And But back to the documentary, back to Sue, and that's when we started to work together. And then we started to work really well. We would have a lot of conversations on the film before we started shooting and while we were shooting, which built up to our almost very smooth and almost nonverbal communication, like on set. We wouldn't even have to say much things. If something like a happy accident happened or like some changes happen, sometimes it's just an exchange of a look that we know what to do. And I think that builds into our collaboration. And then after the film that we did at USC, we just continue to work because it's, we're just so in sync with our ideas, and also like our collaboration is so smooth. And I'm constantly interested in the topics that he brought up.
Yeah. We actually, I don't know if Faye remembers this, but we actually, when we first did that like admissions day or like the introduction day to the program, I went out to dinner with Faye and a group of other friends that we have like that first night. So it was actually like from the very first day that we were friends pretty quickly. It was more so, and she actually, we were friends from the start, but I think we became collaborators. Actually, when you look at it, kind of late in our process at USC. I mean, towards the end of it, but it's definitely just been very strong.
Yeah, definitely, that's true. I remember that. And then me and another student, we celebrated your first birthday at a school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have, it's been from 2015, the very beginning of 2015 to this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So that experience of, or I guess the idea of going back to Georgia, right? Because you'd been there before. You're from Georgia, but like the story, and connecting back to that. Who was like what was the first interaction? Was that with El Refugio, in terms of like reaching out and getting things started?
Yeah. So just to like go through that a little bit. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, which is actually quite a few hours away from Lumpkin, but you would see signs for Lumpkin as you were driving. I kind of did a lot of drives between Georgia and Florida because my mother lived in Florida and my father lived in Georgia. So towards like in my teenage years, I did a lot, in like early 20s, I did a lot of commuting back and forth. And so I would always see signs for this small town and never really knew anything about it. I actually attended it's technically like the Florida's public honors college but it's kind of has a reputation as a pretty radical school. It's called New College of Florida. And there's a lot of activists on that campus. There were at the time when I was there, and I think that tradition has continued. And a lot of people that I went to school with actually knew Stewart Detention Center, because next to it is another facility that's kind of notorious in the South called the School of the Americas, where they train military from all over, particularly Latin America, but I think all over the world as well. They bring them to this small campus near Columbus, Georgia, where they teach them military techniques. So there were a lot of students from New College that would go out there to protest once a year. Once a year, there's like a massive protest, and that protest would carry over to Stewart Detention Center, where there would be like a massive vigil. By the time that we got to Stewart Detention Center, those vigils had mostly ended. They weren't nearly, like, I don't think there was one in the entire time we were filming, and there wasn't, there may have been, and I apologize if I'm speaking out of turn, but I don't think there was. And there hadn't been beyond El Refugio, they were by far at the time the largest presence in terms of activists or nonprofits there. And pretty soon, right around the time that we first went, there had been a series of events. When we first started, there had been an attorney that had moved in a few months before us to the town specifically to take on immigration courses in the detention center. He appears in the film. That's Marty, excuse me. And then you have, there was also at that time, or pretty close to that time, the Southern Poverty Law Center came in and started a nonprofit kind of practice where their attorneys would go in and take on cases at Stewart Detention Center. So there was some movement happening for sure at that time, but I actually got connected to all of that through some old friends at New College who put me in touch with people at El Refugio, who then kind of helped me kind of figure out. They said basically, you can come here and film. We can't promise anyone will talk to you. We can't promise anyone will want to talk to you, but you can come here and you can try and you can kind of see what happens. And so that was a real blessing for us. And then, we came, and in the process, I think it helped that I was from Georgia. I think a lot of initially how we got to know the town was because I was from there, it kind of lent a certain amount of credibility. I was from Georgia. I think it did lend a certain amount of credibility. I think people were more interested in talking to me because I had lived there for so long in my life that I think it really helped. And I also think it helped that we never treated any interview we did as like an interrogation. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to go to Georgia and make this film, and it's a thread that still fascinates me and I'm still trying to grapple with, is, I said earlier that I think this film in very many ways is about a sense of home. All of these people are trying to figure out what home means to them. And I think that's very true for me as well. I think that's part of what that experience was. And one of the things I grapple with a lot is somebody that, until recently, I don't think politics in Georgia necessarily reflected my politics. I think things have changed significantly since I've moved, but I've always kind of had this sense there of this very beautiful place that has in so many ways such a tragic past to it. There is so much trauma in the landscapes in Georgia. You can feel it when you're there. And I think that's something that Faye does a really beautiful job of capturing in the film is that there is so much history in these landscapes that you can kind of just feel when you're there. And we talk about it in the film a little bit. We don't touch on it a lot, but there is a significant history to specifically that town.
Well, touching on that, honestly, what sparked my interest when you said that specifically, I thought of Mac, the Stewart County manager.
Yeah.
Just sort of the history he was sort of speaking about, but like not just how he said it, but like what he was saying and how it was like almost just matter of fact, like this is the legacy of that territory almost. Was that coming out elsewhere too, or like just talk about like how that was when you were like even in that interview?
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's like two parts to that. The first being that, we were aware of that history and very aware of that history. And I think that to a certain extent, we had some success with people talking to us about it. But all of the literature about Lumpkin GA kind of touches on this fact that that it is it's named for the architect of Native American removal, and there was a massive effort to do that in that area. It also has a notorious reputation for the institution of slavery that existed all throughout the country, but specifically in this area, right? And so we were very well aware of that in reading up on it. Getting somebody to say it in one sentence like that was kind of, we never really thought that would happen. And much, all things considered, we didn't expect to hear it from the supervisor of the county. And so I remember sitting in that interview with Faye, and again, that's a moment that is not edited in any way. That's just him going, and he says all of that together. And I just remember, like, there's silence in that shot after he says it all. Like, it's just like kind of like dead air for like 3 seconds afterwards. And I'm telling you, there was dead air in that room for like a minute afterwards, because Faye and I just looked at Faye and I was like, I mean, what do you like? I think that's it. Like what, you know, that was just like one of those moments where we were just like completely shocked, you know? And I mean, everybody knows it.
Information that I was just, honestly, some of the things he even just like divulged, I was like, wow, he's just like, he just said that, you know, like the private prison, you know, accounts for 1/5 of their like, you know, annual budget. Like,
yeah,
just the notion of the comfortability of having contracts per head on inmates in a detention center is such an interesting way. I just like, you know, just moments like that are interesting where it's almost like glazed over. His perspective, because it's part of just how the county has to operate, because like one of the other main stats was that it's in one of the top 20 most impoverished counties in the country. So
yeah.
And what's also crazy, I noticed you had a snippet of one of the CCA commercials. And in that snippet, there's a Crowley County. That's Colorado. I'm from Colorado. And I just realized, I was like, holy cow. Like, because I looked it up. I was like, that kind of reminds me of Colorado. I was like, I know we have a lot of prisons. And I was like, oh, that is Colorado.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, no. So like there was a moment watching it where it actually hit home for me as well. I mean, I'm from Colorado. So.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that is just the reality, and especially like, you know, one of the urgencies to making Lumpkin was that these detention centers were on the verge, and I think maybe are currently. I don't know what this administration is going to do and how they're going to handle it. I think they've made some important first steps in kind of changing that policy, but these detention centers are kind of on the rise across the country, right? Or they were at that time. They were on the verge of it, and they exist in the places where you might least expect it. I mean, that's kind of, in some ways, Lumpkin, Georgia is a very unexpected place to find a detention center like this. Or sorry, Stewart County is a very unlikely place to find a detention center like this. But in other ways, you know, as Marty says in the film, it's kind of the perfect place, right? You know, and because it's so far away, there are so few people there, and it can kind of operate out of the picture. You know, that's actually, you know, not an uncommon thing by any stretch. I you know, with regards to Mac just saying things, I mean, when I look back on it, like, I just think that's who he is authentically, and I think that I mean, I'm not here to psychoanalyze or anything, and I actually am still in touch with Mac, and I'm friends with him on Facebook, funny enough, and you know, I just say that, like, at a certain point, I just think that when that is the reality, and you're somebody that likes to tell the truth and be honest, which I think is genuinely like who he is. I think he is a genuinely honest person. You know, I just think that he was just saying things as they were. And I frankly thought it was like, I found it very jarring in the moment. But I'm very grateful that he said it, because I think that, you know, it really puts things in a perspective. And, you know, I don't know that it's handled in, you know, well, yeah, I think that's all I'll say. I think that for him, it's just, that's the reality of where things are. And as somebody that loves history, and as somebody that, you know, knows so much and has lived in that county for generations, you know, there's no point in sugarcoating it, right? Or like, there's no sense in it, like, or at least from his perspective, like, what would be the point? That just is what it is to him. It's kind of like how I read that moment.
Yeah, I think why I like this film so much was because it is life in general, and history in particular is about hard truths, you know, and about, especially issues like this can be so politicized, especially in the media and like news. You get one side of it, one perspective, but when you have a film like this, you get you see there's like three different sides to it. Yes, there's a horrible immigration issue, and yes, there's like this private prison issue, but then yes, there's also like behind all that, what really is what you wouldn't necessarily think of is all these poor counties and all these poor towns that literally feel like they have no other choice but to accept these contracts because there is no other, because they have these promises of, oh, there's going to be work, oh, there's going to be tax money coming in, you know, so you don't get that side when you're like hearing about these issues on the political front or on the major news network front. You just get these immigration issues, but then they never really touch on the more human aspect behind it and like why these things are even possible and why these things are such like I said, hard truths behind everything. Like you can kind of see it in the film, the people that you were interviewing kind of trying to grapple with the situation. Like, yeah, this is horrible. We know it's horrible, but at the same time, we don't have jobs. There's no opportunities. And like they promised us all these things. And whether or not they came through with it, that was kind of how it kind of led to this point. And that's why I've like really liked so much about the film and the way you guys shot it was that you allowed them to tell it from their perspective so that you can see an issue from more than just the black and white sides that we typically get it from.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, that's exactly, I think, what we were trying to go for in making it. And I'm glad that came through for you. I mean, that's what I get from it. And yeah, I mean, the reality is that like these, I think there's a really strong case to be made from the film that, you know, this detention center and the company that is behind it have not made that promise of the revived town has not been made true for Lumpkin based on that detention center, you know. Yeah. And one of the ways that I try to constantly look at this, and you know, when I talk to you know, we screen this with members of like the Unitarian community, like the and like the League of Women Voters in Richmond County, Georgia, which is kind of where I was raised. And one of the issues that I kind of mentioned to them is that I think that what's going on in this film is you're witnessing kind of two structures of oppression at once. You're witnessing, on the one hand, this detention system that can be seen easily as inhumane, right? But you're also witnessing at the same time the failing of this country to address rural poverty. And these two things are kind of hand in hand in this story, right? Like they're together, and they're kind of inextricable. Like you can't really talk about one without talking about the other. It's really tough in this context to do that.
Yeah. And then you have like this evil empire, like that's just looking to try to take advantage of a situation, which is, I mean, what really hit me was when they were talking about the jobs and you were talking about how they promised all these potential work and all this new found, you know, labor for the counties. But then the work, I forget which lady said it. I forget her name, but I can't remember, but she mentioned how it was basically, all the work that could have been done and given to the community, they gave it to the people that they are putting in prison, and then they're paying them only $1 to $4 a day for the exact work. And you just think like, how is this legal? How is this, you know, how is this even possible? And you know, I just thought that was a really eye-opening moment in particular to see just how messed up the system really is, and how this is allowed to happen in a country that, you know, preaches the American dream, you know, and to people that are specifically coming here looking for that exact American dream, you know. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, you know, kind of one of the I just feel like so much of that is at the heart of America in 2021 at this point. I mean, when we started this film, it was 2017. And we kept filming through 2017 into 2018, and even towards like the tail end of 2018. And we actually had our like first release of it in 2019. But I think these things are things that are kind of embedded in the fabric of this country. And I think that there's also, you can't talk about the South or the United States in general without addressing the fact that, and I think it's touched on pretty early in the film, but that this is a place that was clearly very segregated at one point. And I think there are still a lot, like on multiple levels, there are just so many systemic issues that I think we try to give weight in this film and explore. And I think that the biggest thing to me, and I think one of the reasons that we were so successful in interviews, and I think Faye can speak to this because I think it's the truth, is that this is not a film about attacking a person for how they see themselves or how they see the world. This isn't a film about making people feel bad about who they are or where they live, or trying to shame them into feeling one particular way about an issue. This is really a film about how the system as a whole has generally not worked
for anybody.
And not fulfilled for anybody. Yes, exactly. And how it's left, a lot of people behind in the process. Or maybe it does work for some people. It just happens to be that they are like the CEOs and shareholders of
Corrections Corporation of America. It works for
CoreCivic, right?
Yes,
right. I'm sure that
like CCA, and you realize who it is. Like, I mean, CCA's come into the public in the past in awkward ways, and there's been just flash in the pan outrage, but it never really actually caught steam. I remember before we felt how we feel about Kanye West now. He did do a song where he specifically mentioned the CCA in a song called New Slaves, basically,
right.
Really, really talking about that paid corporate structure. And, the biggest companies in America, Wells Fargo, Jordan brand, Michael Jordan's brand, a lot of companies, McDonald's, they all have lots of stock in interest in this company.
Right.
Well, they make billions of dollars a year.
Yeah. So it's even that level is a whole other crazy thing about it. But I don't know. The CCA is nuts.
Well, can I just say something on that front, which is that in the course of us filming, they are actually at the very beginning, they are in the process of changing their name to CoreCivic. And clearly we don't have exact evidence of why, but the suspicion with the people we spoke with was because of reputation issues that were happening with the name Corrections Corporation of America and its name recognition. They were changing their name to CoreCivic. We tried many times to talk to them and never had any success. So I can't say a whole lot about what their exact thought process was. But I would just say that this isn't funny in it's funny in more of a cosmic sense, I guess. But the water tower in the film that we constantly show at the end of our shoot, and we have footage of this, Faye can tell you, they had to paint over Corrections Corporation of America and they changed it to CoreCivic. I mean, it was just we didn't know how to really talk about that in the course of this specific film, because the film really isn't about CoreCivic itself. I mean, they are a key stakeholder in it, but they're not the main focus of it per se. So we didn't really touch into why that was happening, but that is a thing that we kind of witnessed in real time.
Well, I was going to ask, but I'm not shocked that they didn't want to sit down and talk to you for this film. I'm assuming they refuse a lot of sit downs and interviews with people that want to talk to them about, actually how they do their business. And again, the CCA and the CoreCivic thing, just hearing it out loud, Corrections Corporation, those two words should never be together. That sounds like some dystopian future in some type of, some sci-fi movie. What's going on here? Corporation, you're a corporation of prisons, and it's insane to even think about it. So I'm not surprised that they changed their name. Reese kind of did ask earlier, or mentioned earlier, is about the commercial that you found for CCA. It looked like an older one, and it looked so benign, the way that they talked about what they do. And it looked almost like a Geico commercial. So they're just giving health insurance or something. And I was just did you have to do anything to get that cleared for the film, or did they approve? How did you find this one?
Oh man, that was actually available on their YouTube page, and we had to clear it through like an attorney to actually be able to use it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we used fair use for that.
Okay. Because I was just like,
yeah.
I'm very familiar. I was very surprised that you were able to like get that into the film to have that like associate. Because it was like they were talking about something, and then you play the commercial. Then it was like, okay, now back to like our regular scheduled program. Like here's the like reality. Like it was like almost like a dystopian type of moment where it's like where it kind of glosses over what they do, and then like you go back to reality of like what's actually happening. Like I love that kind of cut and juxtaposition between the two.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Faye. Please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just what he talks about is so interesting because it is the truth, which if you think about it, it's really interesting. I wasn't very surprised they weren't very keen on talking with us because the whole scheme of this is being very quiet, right? They put this detention center in this very quiet Georgia town where no one will look into and no one is looking at, and even a little bit remotely from the small town itself. And everything is done so quietly. And yet, like we see this commercial, which is so loud, giving you promises and hope and that contrast itself. And it's just great to like have that in the film. I think that speaks a lot as well.
That was definitely one of my favorite moments to see that kind of like you're talking about these like horrible things that are going on, then like goes to like this lighthearted commercial where it's just like, you know, you almost see like kids and families playing, and then like it goes back to like what's really happening, and you know.
Yeah, that's actually the genius of our editor, Michael Gill. He was the one that kind of crafted that moment. I had found that ad on YouTube and pulled it down because I just thought it was kind of like just interesting for lack of a better word. And then I gave it to him, and then he sends me a cut a few days later, and it's that scene almost exactly as how it is in the final film. And I was just like, whoa, like it's so jarring from it's so, you know, it's just so at least in Lumpkin, it doesn't seem like that commercial it doesn't seem like Lumpkin worked out the way that commercial advertised. And I would have to speculate that's probably the case for a lot of the other areas that they operate in.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Faye, I wanted to like specifically ask you, since you come from China and you're coming to America yourself, and like kind of how did you know anything about the immigration issues in the States before you came over here? And like, what are your thoughts on after learning more and doing all the research and being hands-on with it? Like, what are your feelings about, you know, the whole process and what you've learned?
Yeah. So actually, before I came to the United States, I never learned so specifically about the immigration policies. All I knew was the idea this is an immigrant country and it's welcoming everyone that's having some contribution to do to this country and wanting to be part of this ideology. And that's what I knew about before I came. And especially before, I think things became more obvious and a little bit different since the last administration. And that happened while I was at USC studying. And I was never really into politics, so I didn't follow a lot of politics. But I remember at that point, I went to see one of their debates before he got elected. And I was like, wow, that's something else. And then he did get elected, and then things became, I would say it has already been a trend after the researches we did and learning that how it is kind of closing down on immigration, and also about how ICE operates in the past. I mean, not only just a couple of years, but I think it's an ongoing progress. And yeah, things just became more blunt through the past administration. And so I told Nick that I felt like politics is never really like major interest for me, But what I think of it is not as like a band-aid grouped parties or like ideology. What I think about it is what it do to people, what it does to people, and what that means to people who are living through it. And I think through Lumpkin, Georgia, like we got to see it, and that's definitely not something pretty, and it's kind of sad, to see it, to witness through that scope. But I think like to do it through that scope is actually quite important, because I feel like right now we live in a time that is, to say, is divided, or it's just the way that information is spreading right now. It's so fragmented, and there are overwhelming information, and people see a headline or see a something that, or see part of a person that identify that person, and they were never willing to be sitting down and really learn about the complexity of what it's really like. So that's why I think doing a film like this and really going down there and showing people, and then through that, hopefully seeing the bigger picture, the system and the structure, hopefully that's something that, at least that's something interests me, and something that, from basing on the humanistic, from basing on the very intimate approach, to really listen to the complexity of people, to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's definitely come through in the project that you guys put out. I guess have the people that were involved that you were interviewing, have they seen the film yet, and have they given you like kind of their responses to it?
Yeah. We showed it to everybody, and we've heard back from most people. I mean, one that I was extremely happy about, because it was honestly like the one I was probably the most nervous for, was Marilyn Threets, the gun store owner. She runs a tax business, but her husband runs the gun shop, and they own it together. It's a kind of an interesting arrangement. But,
guns and taxes.
Yeah, hey man, what can you do? But yeah, I mean, I was really, nervous to hear what she was going to think about the film, because we spent a lot of time getting to know her. And, each interview we did with her, like I said, was like 3 hours long. We just really enjoyed talking to her, and she really let us into her life as well. She took us to church with her and stuff. So, I mean, like we were like,
all right, is this a Baptist church?
Oh man. I think I want to say it's non-denominational, but I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not 100% sure.
All right, so Faye, I have to ask, how was your experience in the Southern church?
It's very, I mean, I have never been to much churches in general, but the Southern church is definitely, like, at least this one that we went to is very different for me. Like, it has so much life to it. There's so much singing. And, like, it's so lively. It's so not. I mean, in a way, it's probably formal, but to me, it's so like full of people and energy. Like a lot of loud singing and dancing around. Like,
it's the Sunday club. It's the Sunday club for sure.
Yeah. No, it was. I would just say though, that like everybody, and another one that kind of shocked me too, but I was really happy with, was Mac Moy. Actually, I emailed him the film, and he emailed me back just like telling me how fair he thought it was, and how that much that had actually surprised him, because I think that they are used to people coming to the town, but it's mostly to talk about the detention center exclusively, and to kind of, and it usually, a lot of those articles, at least in the perspective of the people that live there, they feel as though it paints the town in a negative light.
Well, I did want to mention that at some point. Was I think Comedy Central went down there too. I believe Samantha Bee. I don't know if you saw that, but she did her own little 5-minute segment on Lumpkin specifically, and El Refugio.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. We actually helped her producers
that's awesome.
get to know that area. They contacted us while they were in the process of donating that house to El Refugio. Like El Refugio now has a different house, and it's like really nice. And that's like a huge thing that the Samantha Bee show did for them. But we talked to her producers for a while, kind of about what the experience was filming down there, and we showed them the film, and it was that was actually pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. you know, it was that was a huge, like, that ministry, that nonprofit is such a huge, like, force for good, that it was really cool to see them, you know, get it. Actually, the first time we showed the film was actually to their, like, on one of their, like, retreats where they were together, and we did it in, like, a very small room on, like, an old television, and I was like, I had just flown in from California just to show them this film, so I was, like, very, very nervous, and they, like, you know, they had people from the nonprofit, they had people from other nonprofits that are more like I would say, like, ICE abolitionists, and it seemed to resonate with everybody. You know, I think that one thing I love about it is that it can speak to the people that live in the town. It speaks to my relatives who are maybe more to the center or to the right. It speaks to people that are activists on the ground. I think it has a broad enough audience that everybody can kind of get something from it, right? And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of about it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I knew kind of the issues, but I didn't know as much as I learned just from, like, this 30 minutes. And I think the way you guys kind of laid it out was, like you said, anybody can approach it, no matter what side or whatever your political leanings. We can all see issues. Like, there's just issues, no matter what, right, left, Democrat, Republican, whatever. There's just issues, like major issues that go beyond, you know, just the normal talking points that we always get fed. So I think that's one extremely good thing you guys did. And I think, if anything, this should be almost like required viewing for people to actually understand the issues, like, that are really going on.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Yeah. I mean, if anybody listening is interested in learning more about it and talking with us about it, I mean, they can reach us through that website, our film's website, and we can also, I mean, we have an educational distribution deal. So if people are interested in bringing it to their campus or to their library, they can reach out to us as well, and we can help put you in touch with our distributor to make that happen.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah, we do. One of the things we've loved doing on this are, like, those community-based screenings and getting to show the film. And one of the coolest ones that we did was before the pandemic, which feels like forever ago now. We went to my hometown, and the League of Women Voters in Richmond County sponsored an event where they played the film. And actually, kids from the high school I went to were, like, sitting in, like kids, like, current students from that high school were actually sitting in the front row. And I guess the school had, like, announced that I was, like, had a film, and, like, they brought, I just thought that was, like, the coolest, like, thing. Like, it was so surreal for me as, like, a 30-year-old Nick to see, like, you know, to see kids. And hopefully, I mean, you know, I think that one of the things I'm excited for is, you know, as technology becomes more and more democratized, you know, we're getting more and more voices out there. And I hope that trend continues. And I hope that, if nothing else, like, this film can inspire, you know, people to want to pick up a camera and tell a story about their home or their town in a new way and get people thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the immigration issue, you know, that's something that we can go on and on and on forever about, because it's such a deep topic. And, you know, I think, if anything, we'd have to get, like, a full roundtable of artists and filmmakers to talk about. Yeah. But I guess on the more creative side, what we want to talk about is also kind of the independent filmmaking. Like, you said this is your second project you've put out so far?
This is the first one from our new, we started a company around the time we came up with this film. So this is actually our first project.
Begin there. Talk about Standard Deviation Productions and, like, how that started out.
Yeah, so it started kind of organically in the process of making Lumpkin. You know, when we started Lumpkin, Faye was the first person to sign on, and then it was just the two of us kind of going to Georgia. And before our first trip, one of my really good friends, Michael Gill, he had cut the thesis project that Faye was referring to earlier about the opioid epidemic. He was one of my editors on that, and we were. It was funny because we used to rock climb, again, back when that was actually a thing. We were at a rock climbing gym, and I just said, "Hey man, like, I'm thinking about, you know, going to Georgia and doing this project. Would you be interested in cutting it potentially?" And he said, "Yeah." And then I had a really good friend named Emily Grant Colas, who who was an undergrad when I was a grad student, and she had mentioned she had always been really interested in documentaries, and had mentioned that she had wanted to work together in some capacity down the road. And I just called her up and said, "Hey, I'm doing this project. Would you be interested in like kind of coming on board as like our producer and help us coordinate stuff? Like you won't have to go anywhere necessarily. You just have to like help us set stuff up." She said, "Yeah." So it just kind of became this like 4-piece ensemble, and we started working together, and we just had a lot of success early on. And we just decided that, you know, it would be a good idea to maybe make this a formal thing, because we all liked working together so much that like this would be a good idea to start a small company, just to have that. You know, there's so many things when you're making a film, you can, unless you have an entity or something that you're working through, you can be liable. I mean, like there's all sorts of liability things that come up. There's a bunch of things that you have to consider. Like, you know, if a film goes down or you know, something happens, you know, if you're just a person making a film on your own, you can be sued into oblivion and they can take all your, you know, so there's all these like practical reasons to do it. But it was the main reasons were that like we just really liked working together, and just decided that Lumpkin was just the start of where we wanted to go, and we wanted to make more films. So, you know, when the government shutdown happened in 2018, 2019, when you know, there was that fight over the border wall, and then, you know, Trump said that he was going to own the government shutdown. We went to Ohio actually, to a facility where air traffic controllers had been working for like 3 weeks at the time that we finally got there, and they were getting $0 paychecks. So we just kept telling these kinds of stories, and we kept going out and doing stuff. And, you know, now we're working on, I mean, we have like, I think we're scheduled to have 2 projects come out this year at this point. So we're on track for that. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. But at least 2. Yeah.
So I guess for both of you, has your love for filmmaking always been something that you've always had? How did you get into it? How was this like a goal for you as always, like this is what you wanted to do, or kind of just found your way into it?
Faye, you want to take that one?
Okay, I'll go first. I guess I've started watching a lot of films when I was in high school. So the high school, or like the education system in China here, is quite depressing, at least for me. So that was a getaway. So I watched a lot of films during high school, and then started to think, oh, what if I write my own scripts? What if I do my own films? And then I got into a theater school for my undergrad in China, and majoring in writing for theater. And then throughout that time, I realized that, okay, theater has its charms, but it's not really for me. I still want to do film. So I'm thinking about, okay, then maybe I could like pursue a grad program for filmmaking. So I went into USC film production program without really knowing what specifically I want to do in film. But the good thing about it is, like, in the first year, it let you try out every single thing, like all the aspects in filmmaking. Like you try director, you try to be editor, you're production designer. You're the art person, or you try out everything. And then I realized that I'm not really made for a director. Like when I was a director, I just got so stressed, and I just, like, my mind is running too many things at the same time, and it's too much a torture for me. And the payoff is sweet, but it's not really worth all the torturing. So I realized that, okay, so what other thing I really enjoyed is cinematography. Like people around me, or people around us, were like extremely encouraging and kind. They were constantly saying, oh, Faye, maybe you should consider this. Like, you seem to have an eye for it. And then I also felt really comfortable being a cinematographer on set, either for documentary or narrative films, even though I still have to have a million things going on in my head, but I didn't feel it was like torturing me. So I guess then I just like spontaneously think, okay, then maybe that's the thing that I should do. And then I still just continue to do that. And I just find really happy and lucky that I found like something that I love, that I can like, make it my career and something I'm passionate about. So I guess that's my path.
Hey, no disrespect, Nick, but cinematographers are real stars here, so I think you chose well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't take any disrespect in that at all. I mean, I think that I feel like I'm I'm very humbled by the talent around me on this project, and I just feel like we all kind of brought our A game to it. And but specifically, I mean, a director has to do very little when they have an extremely talented team behind them. I feel like in documentary, I feel that way. Or at least in my case, I feel that way. So yeah, totally.
So I guess, Nick, how did you get your start in film? Like how did you choose this path, or did this path kind of choose you?
Yeah, I think I've been interested in it from a fairly young age, and I got my first camera when I was like 10 years old. Little camcorder that my mom got me. I also used to do like little stop motion animation with Lego Studio, which was like a program that was out when
I had one of those when I was about 10 years old too. I had the full big box, all that.
Yep. Yeah, so I would do that in my bedroom for hours at a time, and I think my parents were worried something was wrong with me. And so so I've always been interested in it. I actually, when I went to my undergrad, I was choosing between going to a liberal arts school or doing a film program. I'd actually gotten into North Carolina School of the Arts, but my father convinced me that it might be a good idea to try something before committing to like an artistic path like that. And also going to the liberal arts school was free, and going to the film school was like a ton of money. So he didn't want to pay that money. And so for a myriad of reasons, my dad was encouraging that I go to the liberal arts school. So I did. And I was very fortunate. I'd studied anthropology, which is kind of the background that I use in filmmaking today. And a lot of my professors actually let me make films for my projects. I just kind of negotiated that into like almost every class I took, that my final project would be a film project of some kind, which is really cool. And I'm trying to think. Like I worked as an AmeriCorps Vista for like a year after I graduated, and then I applied to USC and miraculously got in. I've always been mostly interested in post-production. Directing's actually not like my favorite thing to do, so I make a living working in post-production as well. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, I don't think that everything I have to say, contrary to how much I've spoken during this interview, is all that interesting. And I actually think that one of the joys I get is mostly just collaborating with people. So I really love post-production for that reason. But every once in a while, I feel like I have something to say. And so then I'll, go out and make a movie about it.
Cool. And what was I going to ask? Faye, so in China, I guess, obviously the film industry is a bit different. How would you kind of describe the differences between, Chinese filmmaking and the US filmmaking? And, they are putting out a lot more movies out from there these days too. There's certainly some sort of boom going on.
Yeah, I would say right now it changed a tiny bit. Like I would say from maybe 4 years ago, like it was really thriving here in the film industry. Like there were a lot of money invested into the film industry, and there were a lot of films going out, and a lot of big investments. And then it changed a little bit since the past 4 years. So it slowed down a little bit, but I would imagine that's actually kind of natural because it was like going up a little bit too quickly. What the differences between the two countries, I think like from a very objective point of view, I would say the US still have a far more industrialized and professional setting for filmmaking, and because of the long history of it, of course. And I feel like China is still in the stage of getting it industrialized and making everything more professional with unions and stuff. That's something that they're trying to have more regulation for. And I would say I feel like when I was making films or like on film sites in the US, things were. I don't mean it to make it sound very political, but it does feel more democratic. Like I feel, but also maybe because like my filmmaking experience started in film school in the US, so everyone's like has their own contribution, and it's like more a collaborative art. But back home in China, like things have a stricter hierarchy. I would imagine it's a general thing, but I feel that's more. I feel that's stronger here, and which I don't particularly like, because I like to respect my crew, and I like to be respected by other people as well. And I think with a respectful and equal environment, that you can make the best art, because everyone's feeling free and respected, and they can all contribute to the thing in their own way. And sometimes you could get an idea from, I'm talking for like fiction films, you could get an idea for your assistant camera. Like if you are respectful enough to him, like make him feel comfortable enough and free enough, he may feel comfortable pointing out the thing at the monitor to you, like saying, oh, what about that thing? And maybe that's a brilliant idea. And I think, yeah, the industry in China has stricter classes and hierarchy, which kind of doesn't help with this kind of creative input, but it provides great efficiency. And so it's actually really cultural, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most Americans think they have the greatest idea ever, so people are quick to let you know their idea for something, when you're in your environment like that, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess, what are some of your biggest influences for both of you growing up in film, like director wise, movie wise? Who were, the people that influenced you in your style?
Oh man. Faye, you want to go first?
No, this one is so hard. You should go first.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I think it's a pretty long list, but I think the biggest influence for me as just a storyteller in general probably is Studs Terkel, who used to go around and collect oral histories of people. And I've always found a lot of truth in kind of his sentiment that people oftentimes feel like they're ignored. And one of the best things that you can do as a person is to go around and ask somebody what they think about something, because it really, a lot of people, I think, it kind of touches on what Faye was talking about earlier, but a lot of people are struggling right now because of isolation, because of social media. We're kind of siloed off. And so I think sometimes the best thing you can do is talk. And I think that's something that Studs Terkel embraced. And that's something that I really try to take with me as I tell stories. I think from a film perspective, I really think, I love Errol Morris. I'm a huge fan of the film Rich Hill. I think that that's like such a beautiful film and was such a touchstone for me as a filmmaker. I'm a huge fan, and that's Tracy. I'm gonna mess people's names up, but I love that film. I met the director of it once, and it was just like talking with her and talking with her editor actually was like really inspirational for me. I think that Errol Morris clearly is like a huge influence, I think, on documentary today, but also the Maisel brothers. I'm terrible with pronunciation, but I've always been a fan of their work. And God, you're probably gonna have to edit this. I really don't know. There's so many, and it's hard. I think the main influence for this film was really kind of just like was probably like Laura Poitras. She made a short film called Project X, which really kind of inspired us early on, and then Rich Hill would probably be like the two biggest like touchstones for us for this film.
Cool.
Yeah, I think for me, I could remember like the first film that I watched that made me want to do film was I watched The Elephant from Gus Van Sant
Hmm.
when I was in high school. And then I saw that it's so interesting, not only because of the content, but also like how what he did with the structure and with the medium of film itself to to manifest the theme, to manifest the story that he wants to tell. So that was one major point I watched, and I was like, oh, this is so interesting, and I love it, and I really want to do it. And some films that really influenced me along the way, I was influenced a lot by Korean cinema, like Bong Joon-ho
Yeah.
is one of my favorite director, and I really love. I think one of his films really inspired me and made me see things differently. Is one of his earlier film, which is called Memories of Murders, and that film has such an incredible ending. It's suspenseful and it has a very profound dark storytelling. And at the end, is I wouldn't spoil it for everyone, but if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's really cool because at the end, it has such a great ending and made me realize that, oh, so the story could be told that way. Another film that really inspired me is, or like influenced me a lot as an artist and as a filmmaker is Peppermint Candy, also a film from a Korean director called Lee Chang-dong. And that film has influenced a lot of other filmmakers too, like Sean Becker, who directed Florida Project. And I really love about the film is how empathetic the director and the creator is to the characters that he created in the film, and how much empathy and how much mercy that he has for them. And that really influenced me hugely on the way I see art and on the way that I want to do art. Is I want to have that much care and empathy for the people, no matter they're fictional or they're people in the documentaries. There are people that we talk to in their in the daily life to weave into our documentaries. I think those are some of the things that influence me hugely.
Cool. Very cool.
Can I take that question one more time, or do you guys not?
Sure. Go ahead.
Got more? No,
Yeah.
definitely. All of these films are. I'm like putting on a list. Like, all right, I'm gonna check this out. I'm gonna check that out.
I just butchered my answer to that completely. Like that's like the one question that you know you're gonna get, and I like, yeah, it's always so hard. So I think that I have to say, like, hearing Faye mention Sean Baker, I think that his work was actually probably a good touchstone for us too. And the one that I'm like completely that I completely forgot. So I'll just start over. So I think that, like, for me, like the biggest, like, from a storytelling perspective, I think Studs Terkel and his approach to kind of oral history. But I also think that, like, that in terms of filmmaking, like, clearly Terrence Malick was. I can't even believe I forgot that, but Terrence Malick was just such a huge influence for us, and so many of our shot references, our like lookbook had so many Terrence Malick shots in it. I think Rich Hill by Tracy Draws Tragos was another film that really inspired us, and kind of it does a similar it takes a similar avenue to talk about childhood poverty in the United States, and it's one of my favorite movies of the last like 20 years. And it's a documentary, very well made, very beautiful. And then I think that, like, I think that's, like, there's so many to think of, but I think the Florida Project came out while we were in the middle of filming. And I think that film's approach also, like, as we were going back and forth, I mean, we watched the film together actually at USC, and that was such like I feel like that was a transformational experience for me as well. I mean, that's just like such a beautiful story. Yeah, I mean, there's too many to list. I'm never gonna get this right.
A few more interviews, you might have it narrowed down, like, to your talking points. So you'll get there.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Here, if we said in like the last 5 years, your favorite contemporary piece or director.
Last 5 years, favorite contemporary piece?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the last 5 years, my favorite contemporary piece would probably have to be Citizen4 is outside of those 5 years, but that would, if we were going back 10 years, that would probably be my top pick. I think that I think Florida Project for me would probably be my top pick of the last 5 years.
Okay. What about you, Faye?
Okay, so last 5 years, I don't know if this one is included in the last 5 years, my Nightcrawler.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. That was really good. I forgot about Nightcrawler. Wow.
I really love that one. I think it was brilliantly done. And what else? I also really loved what's the one about the gem? What's it called? The
Uncut Gems?
Yeah, Uncut Gems, exactly. Yeah, that's something that I watched recently and really enjoyed. I mean, it's very different.
Yeah, with the two brothers, like they're phenomenal directors. Yeah.
The Safdies, yeah. That's a great movie too. That and the other one they did with Robert Pattinson was awesome.
Yep. So I guess you guys are in this documentary field. Do you feel like there's kind of this resurgence in documentary filmmaking, particularly with like streaming and how it's always, I feel like it's opened it up more to more audiences and more people to watch instead of having to, only get those big deals.
Okay, you want to take that?
I think you could probably speak better about that topic than me.
I guess. I think that streaming has definitely. I think there's a resurgence in documentary. I think that there now more than ever, there's like definitely more funding to make it. It seems like there's definitely more opportunities to have it seen in the world, and I do think that's one of the really kind of beautiful things about the environment that we live in right now. I think that I'm curious to see what happens over the next few years, but I think that right now there is just so much money going into documentaries by major streaming platforms, in large part because they're like probably significantly cheaper to make than a lot of the other like narrative productions that they might pursue. But I think, in the past 10 years, storytelling in documentary has really just changed. And like, you have the rise of kind of the docu-series and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think that, I think that there's going to be more. And I honestly just hope, like, I just got done watching Sundance, the virtual experience of it. And there were so many cool films that I feel like, because it was on the internet, so many more people are going to get to watch those than they typically would if they would go to Park City. And I mean, Sundance, a lot of films there get distributed, but there's a lot of really cool docs that screen there that don't, or like cool films in general that don't get major releases in the United States. So to have platforms online, I think is a real game changer and just really cool for letting people see new work and hopefully inspiring new voices. Yeah.
And I guess since we do have a lot of we talked to a lot of independent artists and independent filmmakers and all these other, I guess, can you kind of talk about the process of shopping your film around, the process of getting an independent film seen? Like, do you go through film festivals, going through companies? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to get our film seen for like years. I feel like in the process of making it, we would send like rough cuts and early versions out to people we thought might be interested in helping us finish it, and that was wholly unsuccessful for us on this film. I think that so much of it kind of hinged on the last few months of filmmaking that we never really had like the compelling sell until closer towards the end. I think we always had a really interesting topic, but I think, it was really a project that really came together towards the end. So I mean, that particular process of having funding along the way didn't work out for us, but we pretty quickly got picked up for festivals and pretty like big festivals for like documentaries. Indie Grits was one that was like pretty big. And then the Sidewalk Film Festival was another one. And Sarasota was another one that picked us up. And then, I think before we even started getting the festival acceptances, we had already had interest from Real South, which is like a television show on PBS and the World Channel. They were interested in picking up our film as part of their anthology series. So, I think it was kind of a slow process at first, but at the end, it just kind of all started happening at once. And then there was a little bit of a lull after it was on Real South for us, where we didn't have like another distributor for like a long-term deal to host it on or to put it out on VOD or something. So we actually, I screened the film at a state school here in California, and we got connected to this distributor EPF, who put the film out on a DVD at first and sold it to libraries and sold it to individuals, and then helped us to get the film on Canopy. So it was essentially like a 4-year-long process when you like look back on it all. There was the year it took to kind of make it. There was the year after that where it kind of was in festivals and then I guess like 2 years almost in festivals on Real South, and then finally kind of where we are today, where it's on a streaming platform. It took a little while.
I mean, that's probably the typical process. You don't always know when you're starting a project where it will end up and who will be interested, or if it will gather that interest. I'm sure that's got to be kind of a nerve-wracking process to go through.
It's an adrenaline rush when you get accepted anywhere. When you get accepted anywhere, and when something happens, it's like positive for the project. It's such an adrenaline rush. And we won like awards at some festivals for this film, which is never something you expect, but when it happens, you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is actually resonating with people. Like this is actually meaning something. One of them was like at this small film festival in the UK, which was completely like kind of shocking to me, because I mean, just the fact that it resonates with an audience in the UK enough that like they would want to give it an award was really fascinating. But like, I mean, I think that it was just a real exercise in patience, and there were like a lot of disappointments along the way. I mean, I think that we had really high hopes for this film, and we always knew it was something special that we thought was special. And so but when it finally was like acknowledged like externally outside of us, I think that was really cool. And those are moments that I don't think are all that. I think that those are the smallest moments in the whole process, right? Like the process is long. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And a lot of times you're doing it like in mere silence away from people. No one's seeing all the time you're putting into it. And then to have those moments of release where it like gets some kind of award or gets picked up for streaming and you first hear about it, like as filmmakers, those are the moments like that like I try to remember and hold on to, because like those are just like, that's part of why you do it. And I think the other part is like, having people being able to see it in any capacity is always a privilege. And I knew from the start that this is something I wanted to end up on public television. And my dad, who actually unfortunately passed away recently, but he was able to see the film on public television. And one of the things he told me all throughout my time making films was his one dream was that I would have something on PBS. So it was really meaningful when that happened.
That's awesome.
To have a film on PBS.
That's awesome.
And to have my dad see it, that was really cool. And those are those moments that seem too good to be true.
Sweet.
That's really cool.
I guess. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna ask just one more question about like just the streaming thing and stuff, and like had you reached out to streaming services? I know there's like some new things coming or like emerging in terms of like kind of like a documentary focus. Like there's a platform called Curiosity Stream that I saw getting a lot of like new traction, and I think they're like focusing on education and they're more like PBS centric, I don't know, just like your take on just like the future of documentaries and streaming, like will there be more just documentary specific types of things, and like that process of reaching out?
Yeah, well, I do think, back to the question earlier about streamers. I mean, I do think that streamers have done a lot to contribute to the popularity of documentary film, or the resurgence and popularity of documentary filmmaking. And I think the accessibility of kind of new, cool, interesting storytelling on Netflix, on HBO, on Hulu, on all these platforms has really kind of brought it further into the mainstream. And so I do have a lot of optimism in like future or in current and new platforms that are promoting mostly documentary content. I think that's really exciting. I know we're going to continue to push this film out into the world. Our distributor right now has been really good to the film and really has taken a lot of care with it. So I know that we have some more stuff coming in the near future. I'm extremely hopeful. I mean, I think we're always kind of looking to push the boundaries of how we can get a film out into the world. So I definitely see something as like Curiosity Stream or another streaming platform like that in our near future. Maybe not for this film, but maybe for the next one or something else we've worked on up until this point. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really exciting because you can just paste a link on Facebook or Twitter or wherever and have it go out to all your friends and everybody can watch it. And ultimately that's, you do it to share your voice with other people. So that's just a beautiful thing.
All right. Last two questions I have. I guess, is there any particular film you are specifically looking forward to seeing this year? This is to both of you.
I've seen most of the films that I think are going to be awards contender. There's one I haven't. The Mauritanian is one that I'm really interested in seeing. I think that's how you pronounce it, but that I haven't seen yet. I really love the film Minari, and I have really high hopes for that film. So I'm not sure what else though. I think those are my two. I really want to see the new Bond film, but I don't know when the heck that's coming out. I'm a huge Rami Malek fan. Yeah, I'm a huge Rami Malek fan. So anytime he's in something, I want to watch it. But
for sure.
But yeah.
What about you, Faye?
Yeah, Minari is also the one that I'm really looking forward to see it. It's of course, it's also a little bit of Korean. I don't know, like my influences. And I really hope, I watched the trailer of it. It's really fascinating. And I hope it's a good movie to watch. And the new Bond film sounds great. And I would love to watch it, especially during this time. Like, I just want something fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure. There's kind of a lack of big blockbusters last year because of, the whole coronavirus, for sure. It's that was one big missing part of the film landscape.
What about you two?
Darius, you can start.
Oh man. Oh, looking forward to? Oh, that's tough, man. I don't know. It's like hard to anticipate things. Like I'm definitely anticipating that Bond thing for sure. I mean, there's movies that I think are out that I haven't seen yet that I kind of want to watch. Like you mentioned Rami. I think him and Denzel Washington and Jared Leto have a thing.
They do. Yeah.
The Little Things.
The Little Things. Yeah. So I want to watch that film. I'm anticipating watching it, but I don't know, how crazy it'll be. But, we'll just see. We'll see. I'm interested in also exploring just like the more independent films, because I like coming across stuff that like I don't necessarily that's not promoted, because like in New York, if it's like a blockbuster, I'll walk on the street and I'll see a poster, I'll see it somewhere. It'll be in the subways, I kind of get like advertisements just all the time, even if I'm not watching commercials. So we'll see. But yeah, no, there's some stuff just not off the top of my head, I can't remember. But
there's two specifically for me. Matrix 4, because what the hell is that going to be? Because I have no idea. Like I have no idea what that movie's going to be. And the first one, it blew my little 9-year-old head like when I first saw it. So I was just like, I cannot wait to see that. And then Judas and the Black Messiah. That's one I definitely.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Phenomenal. Yeah,
it's been getting a lot of obviously rave, reviews and talks about. And just from the trailer alone, which honestly might be the best trailer I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
I was instantly kind of like drawn to that film. And yeah.
I think you're right. I think that probably is the best film trailer I've ever seen. As soon as I watched it like 3 times afterward. Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like there's another film that I saw this year at Sundance this year that just really made an impression on me. And I would encourage, y'all to check it out when it comes out, but it's called President, and it kind of tracks the fall of democracy in Zimbabwe in real time. This filmmaker's on the ground with like these opposition candidates, and it's one of the like most intense 90-hour, 40-minute long films I've ever seen. Like, it's just like, it goes, and it's like, it's very riveting, and it's just very it has a lot of really great stuff to say about democracy. And another one is Writing with Fire, which is about female journalists in India, which is really awesome too. Really love both of those.
Cool. Definitely add those to the list. And do you guys have any future projects you guys already have in the works that you're thinking about, or,
Yeah, we're finishing up. We have an animated documentary coming out in a few months, hopefully, that is actually a follow-up to Lumpkin. It's a story from the film that we weren't able to include in the final film, but it's the story of a mother trying to explain to her child what's happened to his father, who's in the detention center. So it's an animated short. It's really impressionistic and experimental, and it's made with an animator, Myra Flores, who's done some really cool work in the past. And then really kind of like on the up and rise as an animator. And then we also have a film that we've been working on for a few years about the opioid epidemic that we're trying to finish and get out there into the world this year. So hopefully those 2 projects will be out soon. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so 2 more lighthearted subjects.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a recurring joke that we my mom always tells me she thinks I need to make a film about dogs or something, because she thinks I'd be, yeah. Anyways, but yeah, and yeah, I don't know, but the joke is that I'd probably find a way to make it about a puppy mill or something. So anyway, yeah. My family is concerned about my choice in film.
Hey, if you keep putting out great projects like this, I'm all for it. Go for it, whatever
Thanks,
you want
man.
to cover, man. So,
I appreciate that.
If you want to plug, I guess, where people can check out Lumpkin GA.
Yeah, Lumpkin GA is now available on Canopy. It's also available through our distributor, EPF Media. I think that's epfmedia.com. And we're also, you can follow us on at our website. It's lumpkinga.com. And then our company's production company is Standard Deviation Productions, is also standarddeviationproductions.com. And we're on Instagram at A New Standard.
Cool.
That's us.
And we will try to have the links for everything down below where this video goes up. And we highly encourage everybody to check this short film out. It's phenomenal. And I think it's required viewing for anybody that wants to understand the real issues going on around immigration.
Definitely. It was very short, very sweet, very concise. You guys really, like you said, what Max said, it seemed to be very fair. And I really appreciate that about the documentary, how fair and multiple perspectives that all provided a unique window of information. So we definitely encourage everybody to check out Lumpkin GA and follow both Nicholas and Faye. I don't know if you guys have personal tags for Instagram maybe that you want to follow, or any personal websites as well.
Faye, you go first.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, and it's at TAI 5 eyes after TA. Why do I make it so hard for everyone?
We'll put everything in the links down below.
Yeah.
Yes, and my website, which is feixuefilm.com, and probably a link below there. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm just underscore Nick MB, NICKMB. But again, you can get that below. That's it. That's on Instagram. But yeah, thank you all so much for having us. And thank you. Really appreciate it. This has been really great. And sorry I talked your ear off so much.
No, man, that's what we do. Nicholas Brewer, Faye, Lumpkin GA. Thank you guys for taking your time out and talking with us. And it was just a pleasure.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
Well, to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you listening to our excellent guests. And until next time, keep living life fearless. Peace, guys.